Hi everyone, this is Dr. Mo and this is the third Space Invaders video for our class. This one does get a little bit dense, so you might have to be prepared to pause it and listen to a few things a second or third or even fourth time. And that's totally normal because a lot of these concepts are pretty tricky, even for me even. Okay, so here's what we've got at the end of this. So we have our aliens shooting things. We have our bullets hooked up, so if I can actually manage to hit one without getting hit. Ah! There we go. So we have our bullets set up to actually collide with the aliens, and then their bullets, as you can see, their missiles is what we're calling them, are set up to hit us as well. Okay, so those are the big objectives of this video. So, going into here, we already created a list of bad guys and pushed a bunch in. We're going to do the same thing with missiles. Okay, to get this to work, I literally copy-pasted this over again, and wherever I said bad guys, I renamed the list to be bombs. And then wherever I saw invader, I used the word missile. Okay, our missile class over here is really similar to our bullet class. You can save a lot of time by copy pasting. We did add a couple extra variables here because the missiles from the aliens have a couple different shapes as opposed to ours, which is just kind of like a line. So these two things help with that shape. And then the actual class function, let's take a break from main and take a look at that. The constructor has this fun little thing in here where I'm generating a random number. So do remember inside your main function to run sran, so this is truly random. We are going to have a 50-50 chance every time a missile is created that it's going to either be a C for a cross or S for a squiggle. Okay? I don't think we ever call init missile. I just left that in there because I'm used to it. Moving is the same thing, but we're moving down the screen, and we kill the missile as soon as we hit the bottom of the screen. So make sure you make that change. Fire is pretty much the same thing. It's just that we're firing from the aliens' position instead of our ship's position. Kill is the same. Draw is a little bit more complicated. So for the cross shape, it's just two rectangles. I could have done two lines, but I already had rectangle in there. So this one is the up and down one. This one is the sideways one. Okay. For the squiggle shape, I used this cool function, and it took me a while to figure it out, but it's AL draw ribbon. And AL draw ribbon is going to draw a ribbon with a bunch of corners in it. So what happens with this is it wants an array, and you can see that set up back here in the class. Okay, so it wants a one-dimensional array, and they are sets of points inside them. Okay, so what happens here is here's our first two coordinates. It's just the X and Y position of the alien. We squiggle over to the right and down a little bit, and then we squiggle over to the left and down a little bit, and then we squiggle back to the middle and down a bit, which is how you get that squiggle. The parameters for draw ribbon is we hand it this array of points. We tell it how many slots are in the array. We tell it its color, the thickness of the line, and how many turns are in the line, how many corners. And you can see that just by hovering over. Okay. I recycled the collision function from the bullet over with the missile, and it's just basically Pong collision. It's just a regular old box collision. I was thoughtful here about the numbers that I'm adding for because this that I'm passing, this is the X and Y position of my ship, and so I went and opened it up in Paint to make sure that I had the width and height of that ship correct. Okay? So this shouldn't be too much of a struggle to understand this particular class. Going back to main here, so as I was saying, if you understood this is the same thing. I'm just creating a list. I have an iterator that I'm going to use later on so I can walk through the list, and then I'm going to push a bunch of missiles into it, I'm using dynamic memory to just kind of create them on the fly, so I don't have to do what we did with Breakout, like brick B1, brick B2, brick B3, brick B4. This is a nice little trick to actually dynamically create those objects on the fly. Okay. Okay, so heading into our actual game loop here, we already talked about how the bad guys move, player movement's nothing new here. So we do have the collision working now for our bullet, and I don't think we had that in the last video. So we were able to fire it. This isn't new. Here we go. This part is new. So what we're going to do is we are going to use a for loop, because remember, lists and vectors and arrays work really well with for loops because they let you just kind of walk through each thing in the list. So we are going to set our iterator, which is just kind of like a sticky note that shows which slot we're looking at. We're going to set that to the beginning of our list. We are going to keep going until we reach the end of our list, and we're going to go one at a time. Then what we're going to do, so if you remember this is some funky notation here. What I'm saying here is I'm saying, hey, check if our bullet has hit the x coordinate of the thing my iterator is pointing at. Okay, so it's saying, hey, don't check if I've hit the iterator. That doesn't really make sense. Get the x position of the thing my iterator is pointing at, get the y position of the thing my iterator is pointing at, and check and see if this collision function is returning true. If it is, go ahead and kill the thing I'm pointing at. Okay, so that alien goes bye-bye. So the collision function itself is not here, because as we said, it is in the missile function, sorry, the missile class. And I think we looked at it, oh sorry, bullet. We're looking at the bullet one. It's bullet collision and missile collision are the same things. It's just the pawn collision. So I'm not going to like talk through that because that's hopefully something you guys are okay with. Okay. Now let's talk about the alien missiles. We've got this chunk of code here, these 3 chunks here that talk about the alien missiles. So I'm not going to fire a missile every single game tick because that would just be a barrage of, that would make this thing a bullet hell basically. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through my list of missiles, the bad guy bombs, okay? Sorry, right here is what I'm talking about. And I'm going to see who's alive and randomly drop it sometimes. But I'm only going to drop them from the live bad guys. Okay? So just to recap, we're going to walk through the list of bombs if a bad guy is alive. So here we're walking through the list of bad guys. If it's alive, we're going to then walk through the list of bullets and find one that is alive and possibly have it drop from the bad guy if the missile itself is alive and if this happens to be true. So on average, we're only going to be dropping one once every 400 game ticks. Which is actually, as you can tell from the game here, that's a pretty, I think that this, if anything, this is more than what you see in the actual game. Because remember, these things run at a pretty fast clip in terms of how many game loops. So walk through all the aliens. If the alien is alive, then walk through the bombs. Check if the bomb that you're looking at, any particular missile, is alive. And if that's alive, randomly give it a chance to get fired. And then go ahead and fire it from the alien's position. This is probably the densest, most complex piece of code I have ever given to any of my students. So it's okay if it's not like crystal clear right now. Hopefully we'll have time in class to pick this apart a little bit further. At the moment, just worry about getting it working, and hopefully it'll make more sense as you practice more with things like pointers and iterating through lists. Okay, cool. These are a little bit more straightforward, I think. This is just going through the list of bombs, the missiles, and anyone that's alive, go ahead and move it. And moving just means, hey, change the Y position so it's 10 lower than it is. So if you understood how our ship's laser, whatever we called it, bullet, that's what we called it. If the ship bullet made sense, this is the exact same thing. Okay? This is collision with an alien missile and our ship. So this is really similar to the collision between our bullets and the bad guys. It's just that this time we're checking to see if we got hit. So we are going to go through the missile list every game loop. We're going to check and see if its position is overlapping with our position. So remember, hit is a function belonging to class missiles. So we're just saying, hey, look at the missile you're pointing at, call the hit function on it, pass that function our player's X and Y position, and if it returns true, we're going to run this explosion animation, which I just stole from my Geometry Dash. It's the same bad yellow explosion. So if you want to change this to like a nice JPEG or something like that, or a sprite sheet, that's probably better in the long run. It is important to reset your ship's position, because otherwise you could get in a situation where you are in this infinite loop of getting hit by these bombs. Okay? Make sure that everything's getting drawn. So we were already drawing our bullets. We were already drawing our aliens. Make sure now that you're drawing your bombs, but only if they're alive. So we're walking through the list of bombs, checking if it's alive, and if it's alive, go ahead and draw it. Okay? I recommend that the ship's the last things drawn in the render section, just to make sure that things aren't going in front of it, because I think that looks weird. And that should do it. That should hopefully get you guys to the point where you can have a moving ship with working missiles, and then aliens with working, with working missiles as well. Okay, good luck.